I'm in a flooding. My car veered off the road while I was doing my newspapers. These people are out. They can all see me. They're all standing out there watching.
Miss Debbie, you're going to have to shut up, okay? I need you to listen to me.
What you just heard was a section of one of the most heartbreaking, poorly handled emergency calls I've ever personally listened to, and it genuinely might stand as the worst example of a dispatcher ever recorded. The poor woman on the other side of the phone is experiencing her absolute worst nightmare in real time, and it almost feels like we're right there in the car with her. I'll tell you everything, but as usual, let's get into the backstory first. The story begins in Fort Smith, Arkansas on the 24th of August 2019 with a woman named Debra Stevens, or Debbie as most called her. Debbie was an extremely kind and generous person who worked as a Sunday school teacher, delivered newspapers, and was just well integrated into her community who by all means greatly appreciated her. She didn't have any children of her own, but she got her fix through teaching the young ones, and she absolutely adored dogs as well. In fact, aside from her husband and family, her white poodle Sammy was practically her favorite thing ever. She took Sammy everywhere with her, and if you were to think of Debbie, that white poodle would be one of the first things to come to your mind. So on this day, again the 24th of August 2019, Debbie was up bright and early running her Saturday morning paper delivery job as usual. She had a lot of people expecting to wake up and read their weekend paper, so by around 4 a.m. she was already out there on the road and delivering to her customers. There were some thunderstorms going on still from the night before, but she'd figured they were mostly towards the end, and the newspaper publisher had bags around the papers for this very reason, so there wasn't any reason to pack it in and skip the day or anything. Unfortunately, Debbie wouldn't have known at the time, but these thunderstorms were not on their way out. In fact, they were just starting to really pick up, and within no time they would be dumping an incredibly large amount of rain down onto the ground below. For a while, this extreme rain would continue to pummel down on the area Debbie was in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and before she knew it, her windshield wipers could not even keep up. She was forced to sit and wait for a period of time, but horribly, while she was waiting, this extreme rainfall would turn into a flash flood scenario. These sheer amounts of rainfall were too much for the ground to absorb, and quickly, the water started rising around her car. And you gotta remember, it's dark out, rain is covering all the windows, and Debbie couldn't see anything or make out how serious this was at this point in time, or at least early on in the process. After a bit of time though, water would start climbing and surrounding her car, and a little bit further on it would even cause the car to start floating. And we'll hear that later on in the call. So pretty much everything that could go wrong here was going wrong. Debbie couldn't swim, the water was slowly rising, and so with no idea what to do in this horrible situation, she called her mother-in-law, who then directed her to call 911. And the 911 call that followed this is one of the most evil and infuriating things I've ever heard in my entire life. It's so aggravating you wouldn't even find something like this in a movie, but most of all it's just absolutely insanely sad. During the entire time that she's on the phone, the water continues to climb, and the operator was extremely disrespectful to her as she was pleading for her life, going as far as to tell her to shut up in her final moments, and saying stuff like, "I don't know why you're freaking out." There was even a moment where Debbie was apologizing to her, all while she was the one in severe danger, which, as bad as it is, to me speaks well to her character. And as I alluded to earlier, Debbie wouldn't end up making it through this tragic event, and we can hear the entirety of it in the recording. The whole call is around 25 minutes long, so I'm going to condense this into some of the most critical parts, but just a heads up, this is a hard listen, and it will make you very angry. So if you'd like to skip it, you can go to the next chapter on the timeline. Otherwise, I'll try to remember to put a timestamp on screen. And one more thing, I didn't do subtitles for this one because so much of it just goes really fast, and a lot of it is honestly just unintelligible, so it'd probably just ruin your experience in this case. Trust me, it'll be easier to just listen.
911, where's your emergency?
I have an emergency, a severe emergency. I'm in a flooding. My car veered off the road while I was doing my newspapers, and I'm flooded over here on the end of Kincaid, and it's all the way up to my windows, and I can't get out, and I'm scared to death, ma'am.
Okay,
Can you please help me really
I
bad?
need you to calm down. I need you to tell me where you are.
I don't know, ma'am. I'm on the end of Kincaid down here by these apartments. There's some apartments on Kincaid. I don't know what they're called.
What color is your
Park
vehicle?
Avenue. On the other side of Kincaid, at the very end of Kincaid Street, there's some apartments, and
Do you have a dark blue car, is what I'm asking you? What color is your vehicle?
Yeah, dark. It's gray SUV, lady, and the water's all the way up to my windows.
Okay, hold on for me. Don't hang up.
And it's coming in my windows. I mean, I'm floating in water right now, ma'am.
And you're at close to the area of 5801 Kincaid?
Yes, ma'am. I need help right now. I'm soaking wet. I'm sick, and I don't know what to do, ma'am.
Okay, what's your name?
Debbie Stevens, please help me. I don't want to die.
You're not going to die. Hold on for me.
Well, I'm scared. I'm sorry. I didn't know the water. I couldn't see the water. When I came up on it, man, it just all of a sudden hit me.
And you're in a gray van?
I'm in a gray SUV. I'm on the CX-9.
And you are a paper person?
Yes, I'm a paper person. Please send somebody fast to get me. I'm scared.
Okay, listen
So
to me.
I can't
Calm
swim.
down
I
for
can't
me.
swim. I'm going to drown.
You're not going to drown. Just calm down.
Well, ma'am, it's all the way up to my chest.
Okay,
please
listen to me.
hurry.
I understand. Hold on for me. Just
I'm
hang up,
scared.
okay?
I'm sorry.
I understand. It's fine to be scared. You have a right to be scared.
I'm
Hold on for me.
scared.
Did you go off the road into a ditch?
No, ma'am. I was in the parking lot of the apartments cutting through to go to my paper route because I couldn't go down 66th Street because it was flooded. And when I got to the end, I couldn't see the water in that driveway, and there was water everywhere. And it just took me away and started pulling me, just sucking me in, and then my car died.
If you're doing the paper, you got to know at least a little bit of where you are.
I can do this paper route over here, ma'am. I was cutting through to go to my paper route because I couldn't get down 66th Street.
Tell me what you see then.
There's some apartments because all I see is some apartments. I don't know the names of any of these apartments over here.
What does the apartment complex look like?
I can't see them, but, man, there's two separate apartment complexes, one on the right and one on the left. And I'm in the back side of them back here in a bunch of grass. Looks like a bunch of trees. How long is it going to take?
I don't have an officer available, so it's going to take a minute. So I'm going to try to get somebody out there to you. Just hold on, okay?
I'm going to die. It's all the way up to my windows. I'm going to die.
You're not going to die.
I can't die. Oh, my God. I need to go and tell my mommy bye because I don't want to die. Ma'am, it's all the way up to me. Ma'am.
Listen to me, Miss Debbie. Just stay on the phone with me. I'm going to get somebody out there to you. Just hold on and don't hang up.
I'm going to die, ma'am, because it's going to run my phone because my phone's going to get wet. Only thing you can see. I just need help. It's getting bad. It's all going to touch my steering wheel. I'm going to drown. How long is it going to be, please,
Listen to me. I need you to calm down and hold on, okay?
I'm just scared, ma'am.
I understand that you're scared, but there's nothing I can do sitting in a chair, so you're going to have to hold on, and I'm going to send you somebody, okay?
Somebody save me.
Am I not on the phone with you trying to get you some help?
Yes, but I need somebody to give me help before I die. I'm sorry.
You're not going to die. I don't know why you're freaking out. It's okay. I know the water level is high.
Scared.
I understand that, but you freaking out is doing nothing but losing your oxygen up in there.
Ma'am, my phone's going to die, and they're not going to find me, and it's going to ruin my brand new phone.
Do you really care about your brand new phone? I mean, you're over there crying for your life. Who cares about your phone?
I need to get out. I need to throw up. I need to throw up right now.
Well, then you're in water. You can throw up. It's not going to matter. If you got throw up on yourself, they'll still help you.
Will you pray with me, please?
You go ahead and start off the prayer, and I'll listen to you. I sure will.
Dear Lord, please just help me. Get me out of this water safely, dear Father. Why did this have to happen to me, Father? Just be with me and protect me and help me, dear Father, please. Dear Father, help me.
Just stay on the phone with me, and I have an officer and the fire department coming out to you. So just hold on, okay?
Thank you. I'm sorry if I'm rude, but I'm scared.
You're not being rude. I know you're scared. Just calm down for me.
I'm scared. I've never had anything like this happen to me before.
Well, this will teach you next time. Don't drive in the water.
Couldn't see it, ma'am. I'm sorry, or I wouldn't have.
I don't see how you didn't see it. You had to go right over it, so.
No, ma'am. I was in a drive. I was in a parking lot. There was no water where I was at.
Okay. Are you close to Oakbrook Apartments, ma'am?
Yes, I'm over here by these two sets of apartments. Yes, ma'am. At the end of the street. At the very end of the street. That little circle, or whatever it is.
Street in between those two apartments, yes.
Right behind those.
Okay, hold on. Listen to me. I can't hear you
on the left-hand side,
okay,
ma'am.
hold on for me. Hold on. Are you on the park side? Are you in the parking lot side? Are you on the road?
Ma'am, you go down that street that runs in between those two apartments right there, and I'm on and the street goes to the end, and my car veered off to the left, and I'm behind these last set of apartments on the left-hand side. I'm behind them. I guess it's a circle down there. I don't know. I've never driven down on this part. I don't know, ma'am.
She said she's in.
The back side of these apartments over here, where these people are at, they can all see me. They're all standing out there watching me.
Miss Debbie, you're gonna have to shut up, okay? I need you to
I'm
listen.
sorry.
Listen to me.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, please.
Hold on for me. Hold on.
And it's getting higher and higher. And I'm scared. Oh, my God.
Hold on. Okay, I know. Listen to me. They are in the area. They are trying to find you. They cannot find you right now. I'm trying to ping where you are, so do not hang up because this 911 call is helping me ping your location. So don't hang up on me. Okay, where are you moving to? Tell me where it's going. Okay.
In the aftermath, people were understandably absolutely infuriated, and Donna Renault, the dispatcher on the other side, was actually on the last shift of her job when Debbie called, meaning she was on her way out anyways. The police chief claimed that she appeared to act within guidelines, and although horrible, nothing criminal happened here, so there was an investigation, but as far as I can see, nothing else came of this. Debbie's family was extremely distraught. In fact, her own mother passed away just 3 weeks after Debbie did, and one can only assume that this played a major role. Both of their memorial services were held at the same time. Debbie's family publicly forgave Donna, and in my opinion, that's just about the strongest thing you can do. As absolutely horrible as this was, the forgiveness part is for them, not for the dispatcher. Harboring resentment is a net negative no matter how you cut it, even if it is 150% justified, so I massively respect this. I know this is not technically a criminal act, but some things just supersede all of that. Rest in peace to Debbie. She seemed like an amazing person, and I hope her family has been coping well. A few days ago, someone in my comment section asked me if I had a number one most distressing thing that I've seen while on the internet, and I didn't even have to think about this for 1 second. The answer was yes, and I immediately knew what video it was. From the beginning of this series, I really was adamant that I would never discuss this, point towards it, or remind myself that this even exists, but over time I came to realize that it was very important to tell the story of the man involved, as he's worth so much more than the footage in question. So, I will not be showing you any audio, I won't be directing anyone anywhere, and if I can drill anything into your head today, it's to not go searching for this. And I'm not saying this to be edgy or make the video seem darker. Do not go looking for this. At the end, I'll give you a brief summary of what happens and why I find it to be the worst thing I've ever personally seen, and that's it. The story begins on the 5th of June 1953 in the small city of Hillsdale, Michigan. A baby named Owen Eugene Armstrong was born, and his parents could not have been more grateful. Within just a few years, Eugene, or Jack as he preferred to be called, was already a lively, adventurous young boy, and the community members absolutely adored him. It was said that his family highly valued education and diligence, and in every sense, their lives were on a good path. Unfortunately, however, for reasons that are of course private, Jack's parents would separate when he was just a very young child. And like in many cases, this resulted in lots of moving around for the young boy, living in places like Alabama, and even across the sea in Germany with his mother for a period of time. But unlike other kids, Jack actually thoroughly enjoyed this. He valued the experience, and he was already a people's person, so he liked seeing the cultural variance. When he got a bit older, he'd eventually head back to his hometown of Hillsdale, but he of course got the travel bug during his relocations, and considering this boy was already adventurous, he knew that traveling was going to be a big part of his life in the future. And it was. Jack grew up to do all kinds of work. For example, he was even a sailor for a period of time, but mostly he was a respected construction contractor in his small city, and he'd work it locally for quite some time, but as the years went on, that itch to travel would seep back into his psyche, and eventually, work started to get very limited locally, and he'd start really thinking about taking his skills abroad. And it just so happened that in the early 90s, around the time that the Bosnian War really started to kick off, there was a lot of work for him out there, and they were taking as many people as they could get, obviously. He knew this would be incredibly dangerous, but part of Jack's interest here was that he really did just want to help, and he figured that if he was there to aid in rebuilding communities, and was clearly a foreigner, it may not be as risky for him. So he'd consider everything, talk it out with some loved ones, and he'd decide on taking the risk. And from here, Jack's work abroad really started to kick off. While Jack was in Bosnia, things were incredibly dangerous. In fact, Jack's vehicle would get fired at on a near daily basis. But this became so normal for him that he just started getting used to this level of violence. And sure enough, he got a ton of work done, made some money, and gained a massive amount of life experience over the period of time that he was there. Just to give you an idea of how intense it was at the time and how tough of a guy Jack was, here's a quote that his cousin Rick told South Coast Today. He talked about how in Bosnia, no one would ride in a pickup truck with him toward the end because he had so many bullet holes in his truck and he'd had so many windshields blown out that he was considered to be bad luck. Rick also included that he was a guy who went out and looked at a plot of land and said, "We're going to build something this big and this is how we're going to do it." And so the work in Bosnia eventually came to an end, and Jack would travel on his own terms for a bit longer, before eventually ending up in Angola for similar work, where he would, quote, be building barracks out in the middle of nowhere and having to improvise whatever he couldn't get materials for. Jack would do the same thing. He would work in Angola for a while, and when that came to an end, he would eventually meet his Thai wife, and it was around this time that his family sensed that most of the traveling was out of his system, and he was going to settle down. But as the early 2000s rolled around and things in the Middle East really escalated, Jack ended up being offered a lucrative contract by a Kuwait-based company to travel to Baghdad, Iraq, where he would be living in a decent area with 2 other colleagues, and since the contract wasn't all too long, he deemed it would be worth it for him. After all, he had a lot of experience navigating and surviving war zones, and adventuring was in his heart. His wife didn't think it was totally necessary financially, but she knew it would help and that Jack was very passionate about the idea. So, once again, after Jack sat on it and considered it for a bit, he decided to go to Iraq for what was probably going to be his last major work adventure. During his time in Baghdad, he'd help build a water system for the Iraqi people, work on schools, rebuild a museum, and even work on housing for many of the citizens. Jack was there purely to help, and he got a lot of satisfaction out of it. But towards the end, things were getting dangerous on an entirely different level, and being 51 years old and married, he was highly considering backing out late into his contract. His wife even supported the idea. The problem is, if he left early, Jack wouldn't get the full compensation that he was promised for his contract, and so it just felt like he should stick through to the end. His wife even said that it was okay and not to worry about the money, but Jack needed a bit more time to sit on this decision. And unfortunately, that extra time spent in Iraq would lead to one of the most horrible outcomes possible for him. Jack and the other 2 colleagues he lived with were well aware that their house was being watched, and just to put it into perspective how much danger they were in, their own house guard had to leave and stop protecting them, claiming that he was getting threats by militias for protecting Western workers. So at this point, not only were they being watched by militias, their house wasn't even being guarded. And horribly, on the 16th of September in 2004, Eugene Jack Armstrong and his co-workers Kenneth Bigley and Jack Hensley had their residence invaded and were captured by an Islamic extremist group called the JTJ. Just a reminder, these 3 men were just in Iraq to help out, but if you're in any way familiar with the climate at that time, you'll understand that in the eyes of these militants, that did not matter. These now captured men were going to be leveraged, and if the militia's demands weren't met, you can figure out the rest. And of course, as many people expected, 2 days later on the 18th of September, the JTJ released a video of all 3 men on their knees in front of one of their banners, claiming that if their demands for the release of coalition-held Iraqi women weren't met, the captives would be taken out in 48 hours. This did not get resolved in time, however, and sadly, the first person to be taken out by these militants just 2 days later was Jack Armstrong. And this is a video I was referring to in the beginning of the entry that, without a doubt, is the absolute worst thing I've personally ever seen. Now, before all the tough guys come in here and say that they've seen all these decapitation videos and it's probably nothing, this is actually one you probably haven't seen, as it was massively overshadowed by the video of Kenneth Bigley, his colleague, who was the last of the 3 standing, and who was taken out 4 days after Jack. The video of Kenneth is the one that went very viral, and almost everyone would have seen it in the early 2000s. But the video of Jack, so the very first hostage to be ended, stands out for a very specific few reasons, and that's why I say it's the worst. For one, it's very clear that Jack is on no sort of sedative or pain remover, which you wouldn't think they'd use, but it helps a lot in making the person remain still, so this is actually common practice. So it's clear that Jack, or Eugene Armstrong, felt everything. The second thing is that the job is just done horribly, as this is obviously not an easy thing to do, and it just makes it last so much longer than necessary for him. And 3, this is the biggest one, the audio is the worst thing you could ever possibly imagine. When the vocal cords get hit, it suddenly sounds like 4 to 5 people are screaming all at the same time, and he was still coherent enough to hear these noises coming out of his own body. It's just the worst thing you could ever imagine, and this is why I wanted to focus on Jack's story, not that footage. And for that reason, I refuse to say anything more about it, but considering this is what prompted me to look into this man's story, it would have been asinine not to give you the gist. In the aftermath, all 3 of the men would be taken out, each 2 days after the other, and all of their videos would circulate online. I can cover the other 2 men in the future if anyone's interested, but it's hard to get to the level of depth I'd like if I were to have done them all in the same video, and I think they all deserve to have their stories told fairly. Eugene Jack Armstrong was a brilliant man with many skills and who had many people who loved him, and unfortunately, his kindness and willingness to help others would play a role in his eventual capture, which is a sentence I don't even like saying. Both his family and home city of Hillsdale remember him as one of the best people to be around, and they try to focus on all the good work he did, rather than the last couple of weeks. Rest in peace to this great man, and thank you for inspiring so many people, and doing so much good work. This is a case that I heard about a few months ago and shared on my Patreon, but there wasn't enough information on it, and it was really just too soon for me to go out there and start speaking about it. It was literally days after. Since then, there's been a few more developments, but still, there's just so many questions left unanswered here. The story starts with a 19-year-old Sikh woman from Halifax, Nova Scotia, named Gursimran Kaur. She and her mother had left Punjab, India in the years prior to search for a better life, moving to the UK and then eventually to Halifax, Canada in the year 2021. Gursimran was said to be a great young woman with big aspirations, and considering her and her mother came out here knowing they wouldn't see their family back home for quite a while, it was clear that they were very dedicated to their future. Unfortunately though, life can be absolutely cruel and unfair to those who deserve it the least, and on the 19th of October, 2024, something incomprehensibly bad was going to happen to this poor girl. Around a year after arriving in Halifax, Gursimran and her mother would both get jobs at the same Walmart, which was great in many ways because they were still relatively new to the country, and having one of the closest people around you is obviously going to make things quite a bit more comfortable in this context. They ended up working there for a couple years, and these two working together went very well. Of course, there was no shortage of annoying customers at times, but the mother and daughter had no issues handling it, and it was a small price to pay for the possibility of a greater future. It's just part of the job. They also integrated very well into the crew, and after a while, it sort of became very routine, like any other job. Again though, October 19th, 2024 would sadly be the last time that this mother and daughter ever got to work together. In fact, it was going to be the last time that they ever even see each other. At some point in their shift, Gursimran's mother tried calling her, something she did often on the job to save time when she was giving her daughter some sort of task or just to locate her. After all, this was a big store. In this instance though, not only did her daughter not answer, but the phone went straight to voicemail. This was particularly unusual as Gursimran's phone was never off, especially while she was at work or just during the day in general. She tried a couple more times to no avail, and her motherly instincts kicked in. She could just feel that something was not right. And so this now concerned mother started to wander the store looking for her daughter. She'd check everywhere, and her co-workers sort of just dismissed her worries, claiming that Gursimran was likely just somewhere helping one of these store customers. When a bit more time passed and she still didn't show up, however, some other co-workers started to join in and help look around. They'd check each aisle diligently, peek outside, check the lunchroom, and finally, even the kitchen. And around the time that they were scoping out the kitchen, one of the co-workers pointed out some leakage bubbling out of the bottom of the walk-in oven. And horribly, when they opened this oven, they found her. Gursimran had been completely cooked and was at this point far beyond help. Her mother was right there as the oven was opened. In fact, some reports say she was the one who opened it. One can't even begin to imagine the horror that she experienced at this moment. This has to be one of the most unbearably awful ways to go, and anytime I hear a story like this, I wince. But to find your own daughter in this state on top of that, I just have no words. The police were quickly called, and a stop work order was imposed on this location while the investigation got underway. It was lifted relatively quickly, but out of respect and to give them time to replace the oven, this Walmart in Halifax shut down for just over 3 months, only recently reopening. A GoFundMe was made by the Maritime Sikh Society that raised almost $200,000 CAD, and according to the description, the family's sufferings are unimaginable and indescribable, and efforts were underway to get her brother and father over to Canada. Additionally, they said that because police are still investigating, no more details can be shared. But since then, which is just over 4 months ago now, there still really hasn't been any more details released, other than the police saying that no foul play is suspected. And this is perplexing because there's just an unusual amount of questions here that no one has any answers to. For one, manufacturers don't just produce walk-in ovens like this without very strict safety measures in mind. There is a button inside that releases the door and can let you out if you for some reason get stuck. There's also a handle inside, it'd be hot, but you can use it to open it. And it doesn't even appear to lock shut from the outside or anything. And even if you are outside the oven, it's extremely hard to shut, and you have to intentionally put a lot of force on the door at the end of the closing trajectory. So there's an emergency release, a handle inside, and the door doesn't lock only from the outside. This led to many people theorizing that someone did this to her, but again, foul play was ruled out by the police. There's just so many questions here and no one knows what to make of this. Was there some sort of malfunction? Was it outdated or an unmaintained model? Until more comes out, we simply just won't know. But nonetheless, I found this to be incredibly distressing, and I truly hope that the family has made some sort of progress in the recovery in the few months since. It was also really cool to see the Sikh community on the East Coast band together and support them. Rest in peace to this beautiful young woman who still had her entire life ahead of her.